You know, looking around here in Pennsylvania in the autumn, I'm looking at all the eminent beauty that has surrounded me my whole life. And I look at this, and I look at all the gold, and I look at the yellow, and I look at the orange and the crimson red, and just the beautiful colors and natural display arrangements that are just so profound that man cannot do with a paintbrush or even a chisel and a piece of marble. You know, Da Vinci said once that the greatest painter is nature. That's what he said. And I think that nothing displays that more accurately than what you're seeing now, as I always come here to this park and engage in dialogue with you, because it's just so comfortable to sit here. But when I sit here and I think, I wonder 300 years ago, 400 years ago, 1,000 years ago, how a Native American would stand here where I'm at and admire all this beauty. What was going through their head when they saw all of this? What thoughts that they procure, you know? What was their reaction to such all the beauty that was around them? Undisturbed beauty. No intervention from white settlers, you know, that are full of avarice and wanting to take their lands from them. Which brings me to today's topic about the flowers of the killer moon. Now, for those of you who have not read the book written by David Grann, it's almost 400 pages of exceptional research. It's a very well written, immensely well researched work. I highly recommend you read the book before you watch the movie. Read the book, then watch the movie. I mean, that's the general rule. That's the rule I go by, but you are your own volition, so you do as you please. But I think you'll find the book well worth your read. If you are a student of Native American history, whether it's from the white perspective or the red perspective, I think it's an indispensable book to have in your library that's relative to that. I want to talk about the Osage people because I don't know if a lot of folks know this, but what you're seeing right now in front of you, this is where their origins are. We had Osage people here, ladies and gentlemen. The term Osage itself is actually a French version of the tribe name, which can mean, it was translated usually by the French as calm water, but the Osage looked upon it a little bit differently. They were more focused, and they used a term that was Wasuza, which means midwaters. They were very proud people. They were very mystical people. They were very religious people. The land was sacred to them. The rivers, the forests, the trees, the plants, the flowers, the bushes, the grass beneath their feet, the fields, everything in creation that was ever created had life in it, and it was brought on by the Spirit. We know that in the Algonquin term of which originally these people were, but this might be a familiar term to you. I certainly hope it is, but in this part of the region of the United States, we call that Manitou. Now, I'm not going to get into it. Manitou is a big, wide, diverse term and meant different things to different tribes. In some cases, it was related to evil. But for the intents and purposes of this vlog, we're going to look at it as something that's beautiful and profound. And when the Beaver Wars happened, the Osage were dispersed and were forced to move, like many of the tribes here in the Pennsylvania and Ohio Valley regions were doing, as a result of wars and battles with the Iroquois, because the Iroquois wanted to control all of the territory pretty much here. You know, the Iroquois Confederacy at their height had 6 million acres of land to their name. I think they now own like maybe 100, if that. So yeah, you know, the history is not kind. The history is not kind to the people who were originally. But I think it's important to establish an identity. And I'm going to use a term here that you're not probably familiar with, and it's a big fancy term. It's called demonym. And the demonym of the Osage people is relatively inaccurate. If you go to Wikipedia and you look up the Osage Nation, you're going to see it as Siouan. Yes, that's correct that they would eventually adopt Sioux ways and speak their languages, but their demonym is here. Demonym is just merely a term for using a group of people in one place. It's not divided by language or culture or customs, it's divided by place. And places, specifically here in the Ohio Valley, which you're looking at, this whole park right here would be a place. It would be a place for a certain family of tribes, or it would be a place for just one tribe, or it would be a place for maybe 2 tribes or just 3 tribes. You're looking around here, and for Native Americans, that was sacred. Your place. Not so much spiritual beliefs, religious implications, cultural identity, celebrations, color, wardrobe, all of that, just like we have in our cultures. Not that that's not important, but your place of origin. How many of us can relate to that? We all come from a place. Our grandparents come from a place. Our ancestors come from a place. Well, Native American culture, that was sacred. That was taken away from the Osage in one regard by another group of people who were Iroquois that didn't want them here. As a consequence, when a lot of these tribes would move and relocate to other areas in the nation before it became the United States, and they just simply forced them to move into their territories unwillingly, they adopted that place and it became their place. You see what I'm saying? You see how the significant impact that has? Well, this book is a dive into that, the Killers of the Flower Moon, and so is the movie, but it shows as the result of what happens when people are swindled. Now, I'm not going to get into the minute details of the book or the movie, but, you know, purportedly, there were about 20 Osage people that were killed as a result of these murders to take away these families here to their rightful oil wells on their reservations. According to the book, I'll give you one spoiler alert, but it was probably at least hundreds of Osage Indians were killed as a result of this. The avarice was so uncontrollable for a certain group of people. Mr. Hell in particular, who's played by Robert De Niro in the movie, he went to jail, of course, because he was the mastermind and plot behind all of these murders. But when he eventually went to prison, I don't remember the exact time he did with years in prison. I can't remember how much time he did, but he ended up getting paroled. He ended up living in Montana for a while, and he was actually a cattle handler up there for another corrupt person. And he ended up dying in a nursing home the last few years of his life. He didn't suffer the fate that he should have suffered, in my view. Not that I have a say in such a matter, and I don't wish ill will on anybody, particularly when it comes to executions and prison times. But, you know, the Osage people never got the repercussions that they should have gotten. It never happened. And it's an unfortunate system that was in use at the time that procured that, and it was instrumental in, you know, taking a identity of a people and just strangling them with their own identity, replacing them with what was on their land that, according to certain individuals, they didn't know how to use and had no use for, which wasn't true at all. But this is just an unfortunate thing. When you read the book, you'll understand what I'm talking about, and watch the movie, and you'll even perhaps have more of an appreciation. But there are groups of Indians here that we know from the archaeological record. Osage people probably lived here since 700 BC. So they had a foothold here, right where you're seeing now in the Ohio Valley. Here in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, they probably lived all over these places in different parts at different times in that over 2,000-year history. It's extraordinary. And I want you to remember that term demonym, because that place, that sense of identity, where you live is who you are. Do you understand that to the Native American, that's what was more important. Where you live is who you are. Your home life and your home being is so important. And they died for that. They died protecting that. They didn't just die to protect women and children. That's not what they were fighting over. That's one of them, certainly it is. It was to preserve their way of life and their identity and culture and who they were. But their place was everything to them, even if it's a little place. And let me tell you something, when you see all this out here, when you see all that's before you here, okay, everything is a place. Everything has, when I walk here, I'm walking under a sweat lodge. I'm walking under a sacred gathering that probably was the spot of a religious festival or a religious celebration that took place 2,000 years ago. This bench right here was probably a place where young Indian girls would come and have fun and play games with each other. You see the places? I want you to appreciate in this vlog, and I'm attempting to present that today to you, that while there are huge reaches out there for history where it takes place in other parts, all of that is attached to a place. And in the case of the Osage, it's right here. And what took place there has its roots and origins back here. I hope you can appreciate that. I hope this has made you think a little bit differently about Native Americans and how they, you know, unraveled their identity and how they tried to make white settlers understand that. So I hope this video has given you some enlightenment about that, and then maybe a little bit more of an open mind. Okay, guys? Have a great Sunday. Enjoy your autumn, and I will see you in the next video.